This particular one is my favorite. This is Sandra and Matt. Okay? Just from the picture, remember representation. From this picture, can you know something about Matt and Sandra? You think it's a love story? Mm-hmm. Do you know something about the character of Matt and the character of Sandra? One is good, one is evil, yes. You see the black heart and the red heart? Okay, very good. Do you know what this story was about, okay? This story was my daughter's attempt at dealing with sibling rivalry. So it's a thinly disguised, you know who's the good one and who's the bad one, all right? Okay. So let me tell you the story of Matt and Sandra. Sandra and Matt, I need my glasses. I'm sorry you can't see it because it's in pencil and this is like fairly early. Sandra and Matt are brother and sister because she doesn't want me to know it's about her sister, is it? Yeah. They live with their grandmother. Their grandmother lives by the sea. Their grandmother always has a difficult problem solving when Sandra and Matt's parents are not in. Now do you know who this grandmother is? My helper. Because when I and my husband go out, obviously my second daughter was a terror, all right? And my elder one, this was the goody one, right? So the grandmother is my helper, who has a problem every time the parents are not in, right? The problem is that Matt and Sandra fight. Sandra, light, kind, and loving-hearted, always tries to calm her brother down. Matt, always so rough. You see, there's spelling errors, but it doesn't matter, all right? So rough, naughty, and stubborn, always wants to disturb and start a fight with his sister. Grandmother says she's not going to look after Matt. So now, only Sandra is staying at grandmother's house. Only she can go look at the sea. Only she can spend more time with grandmother. So now Matt has learned his lesson, all right? So you've got this huge wish list that my second daughter would just disappear and go away, and that and then at the end, I have comprehension question. Question: was Sandra and Matt a brother and sister? All right, recall. Who did they live with? What was their grandmother's problem solving? And then my favorite: did Matt learn his lesson? What would you do if you were Matt? What would you do if you were Sandra? All right. So those of you who know the Bloom's taxonomy, you can know that she has gone up. All right. Okay. So what's happening is that essentially she wants to, remember we talked about invent, innovate, invent. So she's got a very clear purpose. You've got a very clear situation where you're connecting because the child is obviously upset. All right. So there's whole thing happening with her sibling. She wishes her sibling would go away. And there's obviously a lot of problem happening at home. And she doesn't want to be a telltale. But she managed to get that message across to me. Right, very effectively, especially the black heart Matt and the red heart Sandra, my favorite. Okay, so these are issues that are important to the child, all right? And so you find that the personal voice is something that you want to be encouraging through the writing. So for the very reluctant reader, start with the small posts, all right? So you find that when the first times that, no, I'm not using that. So I remember I showed you just small pieces. All right? Why? Because it doesn't seem so overwhelming. It doesn't seem so frightening. So if you just encourage them to write in small pieces, when they write a lot in one small piece, there's a sense of happiness, a sense of achievement, right? And then after you read a story, ask your child to imagine a different ending, right? And that is where the Ramona and the aliens spaceship, that kind of a story comes, right? And when your child draws, don't waste it. Ask them to tell you the story of the drawing. Don't just say, what is this drawing about? Say, tell me the story of this drawing. So that from the drawing, you are encouraging the child to actually start spinning a story. All right? Because it's important for them to start telling you the story as such. We played a lot of word games. All right? At home, we played a lot of word games. Why? Because you just want them to create a sense of awareness of language. All right, and to see how languages, when these were two of the favorites of my kids actually. Speaking frames, these are very good because I'm going to show you two examples. Speaking frames are when you give the child, you write down for the child structures. All right, you write down structures for the child, and you get your child to start using literate talk. Right? So every time you give them a language pattern, and then the language pattern, remember I showed you the two horses. Organization is there. Once you give them a speaking framework, the organization is there. Using that, they begin to innovate and invent. So it's not very frightening, all right? Now I'm going to show you this. So this is an example. If you have two children, this is one thing that you can do. You can say, we are thinking of a place, all right? Please keep in mind all the things that I've told you about. We want them to connect, all right? We also want them to build up language, connect. You also want to challenge them a little bit, all right? And you want them to build up an awareness. So this is what's happening is the speaking frame, because what you're trying to do as a parent is that you want to give them structure, safe structure, so organization is there. So this can be done as a game, and you say, okay, we are thinking of somewhere, all right? And if you are doing it with a child, then you can say, Sandra and I are thinking of a place, and then you give the child choice. Is it outdoors, indoors? Then you start thinking about emotions and connecting with the senses. If you were in this place, you would hear. Now, if you look at the structure, this is literate language. If you were here, you would. So this is how grammar begins to be internalized when you speak. All right? So the conditional, you don't have to teach them grammar, but the more they begin to see this, they begin to internalize the structure. You might be feeling, in this place you might be able to smell, you would probably see, probably, might, this is all conditional, language of the conditional. And we would or we would not like to visit this place, choice. Because, so you have a sentence and then you're teaching them the structure of supporting opinion, because these are all language skills. So you end with an opinion, why? So if I were to tell you, for example, Sandra and I are thinking of a place which is indoors. If you were in this place, you would hear splashing. You might be feeling excited. In this place, you might be able to smell chlorine. You would probably see children in their swimsuits. We would like to visit this place because I enjoy the activity that I do here. So then, what is this place? Simple. All right? So this is why the parent needs to be involved. So the child has to create the picture for me to guess. All right? So I have to be able to guess from there. So if I don't get enough details, I can say, don't you think that I would also see children in swimsuits at a beach? And then you will say, but mommy, this, I already said it was indoors. So you want to create that kind of a conversation going. But you're also giving them frames. All right? So the choice is there, the challenge is there, but you're also involved with the child because the child needs you to guess something, all right? So if you go to the Excel Fest, I'm sure you've been to the exhibition, you find that the kids are, especially where did I go yesterday, at Innova Primary, they have this huge wheel, and then you have to go and guess the questions. And the student presenter was presenting that he was so excited because he really wanted me to guess, and if I didn't guess, he would have been very disappointed with me. All right, so he knew the answers, and then we had to interact, and he had these ready sweets to give me as well, and he really wanted me to succeed. Right? I think and then when I was like, and I pretended, I said, then he said, the answer is on the board. The answer is on the board. So you want that kind of an excitement from the child, right? You can also do for good uses, right? Any object that you take, any object, and then you ask the child to tell me, one use for this would be as. This would be a good use because, now this is the language of the tenses, right? The tenses. And then you're also teaching connectives. Another use would be, we also think it would be useful. And then you teach opinion supported by reason. Our reason for thinking this is. You also teach markers. Finally, it is. And then you ask them, then you have the evaluation. Of the four, I think my best suggestion is because. All right? So conversations there that follow from speaking frames. This is another one where you can actually take, my children used to love looking at your photo albums. I think nowadays you only have digital photos. My time we had photo albums, right? So we still have them. Doing renovation in my house, my contractor says, what are these? Because I've got piles of them. But my helper, because my helper didn't speak English very well, she was from India and spoke Tamil. And I didn't want her to actually create wrong speech patterns, so I encouraged her to speak in Tamil. But one of the ways that she could actually keep my children occupied was to go through the photo albums, because my helper was also very curious, all right, big busybody, so she wanted to know what's happening in my family. So the photo albums were very useful. She would say, who is this, who is that, right? And children, they don't always remember your aunts, your uncles, etc. So sometimes one of the things that you can also teach, and this is because you want to create emotions, you want to create imagination, all right? So you say, okay, you just point to anybody and say, if it were a fruit, what fruit would it be? All right? And then why? Okay? And one of my friends, and this was in JC, she tried this with her class, and she said, each one of you tell me what animal you would be. If you were an animal, what animal would you be? All right, so this was a kind of an icebreaker she had. Backfired because one of the smart Alex put up his hand and said, ma'am, what would you be? She said, I would be a horse. And he said, oh, and I'll be a horse tamer. All right, so you might be a bit careful there. Okay. This is the other thing that we can do, a sensory chart when we go, all right? Just to stay in the present, wherever you're going. If you're in the car, you're in the East Coast Park, you've come to the hawker center, you're sitting at the doctor's clinic waiting for your appointment, you're riding in the bus, just conversation with your child. What do I see? What do I hear? What do I smell? Just paying more attention to the surroundings so that the imagination is fired a little bit more, right? Engaged a little bit more. And then when you come home, she may want to write one paragraph. Don't have to write one whole essay, right? Just one paragraph about what I smelt, I heard, I saw, I tasted. I can give you a website where you can find these files later if you really want them. This is your art talk, which I've already talked to you about. Ask your child to talk about his drawing, and you write down. If the child is very reluctant, you can start by writing it down, all right? But then later on, you can get your child to write it as well. I've showed you this. Prompting for detail. This is the example that I showed you when I went away for my Malacca trip, all right? So I asked her, how did you feel? And she said, I feel very sad. And she said, oh, and if you were going away, I would have felt devastated. So you want to introduce the vocabulary. Share your feelings as well, because that authenticates their feeling. It makes them feel it is all right. Because too often, especially when they feel jealous of their children, you say, oh, you shouldn't feel jealous, you are the older child, or you're a boy, you shouldn't cry. Those kind of things negate their feelings and negate their emotions. But it is important because that's part of your human experience. If they feel jealous, they feel jealous. All right? And if they feel angry, they feel angry. If they feel it's unfair, it's unfair. I mean, it's a very real feeling for them. So the more that you acknowledge the feelings, the wider the range of emotions that the child begins to feel. All right? This is something else that you can do when you're traveling. You can also write postcards. You can ask them to write a postcard to their friend. Sometimes you need to post it, but you can choose to come back and post it. It doesn't matter. But you can also make it a team effort. Say each one of us writes one sentence, right? Or you can write captions, describe the actions that the child's doing. I don't have these pictures. I don't know what I did with them, but we would look at the photo albums. I know that I'm showing my age, but previously we had photo albums, and beside the albums you will have place for captions. All right? So these captions, I would ask my children to write the caption to describe what was happening. And they feel it's important because they know that the photo album is something that the adults look at. So instead of when I write it, it's a lot neater, of course. All right? But when she writes it, she gets an opportunity to talk about the place. All right? So that validates as well. We also used to have holiday memory books. When we went on a trip, I would just buy a blank sketchbook, and then at the end of the day, she could just put one brochure in there, or she could put in a sticker, or she would write 1 or 2 sentences a day at the end of the traveling day. But don't make it a chore. Don't say every day come back, you must sit down there and write me 2 sentences, if not you cannot sleep. No. All right? Please don't do it. Yeah, but it's a way that you can encourage writing as well.